Good morning, wrestling fans. Today is Wednesday, January 25th, 2023. Lance Brock here again in the snow again here in Michigan, getting a little bit more snow. If it's snowing where you are, hope everyone is safe today. And just before I left, I was listening to What Happened When with Tony Schiavone. Him and Conrad Thompson were watching the Nitro after WCW sold out 1998, which sold out isn't quite remembered for one of the great January pay-per-view traditions. But speaking of January traditions in wrestling, this Saturday, the Royal Rumble coming up. But to get back to WCW sold out, I remember that started off actually as an NWO pay-per-view. I want to say I talked about that I might have been doing at the time the TBT Throwback Thursday show, or one of those other ones I came up with, Awesome Extra, something like that. But I want to say quite a while ago that I have done a podcast talking about that pay-per-view, the original one. And if I did, I don't remember what I've said about it at the time, but I actually watched it not too long ago, and that's one of those ones I remember at the time, the NWO, when it was big. So WCW had a pay-per-view that was all NWO, even though actually it was a WCW production, but they made it seem like this was a separate thing from WCW. And they had Nick Patrick since he was the heel referee who turned against WCW and joined the NWO, be the referee for every match. And I think there was one, I don't remember which match exactly, but I think there's where he got knocked out and then Randy Anderson ended up getting involved. I want to say it might be the match between the Steiner brothers and the Outsiders, who now, most recently, I've seen signed a Legends deal with WWE. That's not too much of a surprise. Went into the Hall of Fame, and seems like their relationship with WWE is good as of right now. And wouldn't be kind of surprised actually, that they didn't have them show up on the Raw anniversary this Monday. But maybe might be seeing appearances of them every once in a while on kind of specials like that. But WCW sold out. At the time, like I said, I was excited about it. An entire NWO pay-per-view, and they even had on Saturday night every week a segment they had in NWO Saturday Night, where it was in black and white and there was a masked referee, and I think that was before Nick Patrick actually turned, and they had a referee who was wearing an NWO shirt who had like a ski mask or something on. And you could tell it was him, the way he was standing and everything, the way he moved. This pay-per-view though, Hulk Hogan and the Giant, Paul White, and like I've said, when I went back and watched it, and this isn't the only wrestling pay-per-view or show from the past where I remember when I was younger that I thought the show was really good, liked it a whole lot, and when I go back and watch it now, it's not quite as good as I remember it being. And I'm not saying they're terrible or anything, but not quite as good as I remember them being at one time. And this one, WCW sold out, was most of them 96, or was it 96? Or no, 97 was the first one, I believe. Or in 98. Then kind of like, I'm going to say those were really the most memorable WCW pay-per-views. They were in between Starrcade and Super Brawl. I definitely recommend, though, listening to Tony and Conrad on What Happened When. Watch it. I haven't finished it yet. I'll have to finish that later, though. And another podcast I recommend is Rewind Away. This week from Post Wrestling. You do have to be a Post Wrestling Cafe member on Patreon to hear it, though. John Pollock and Wei Ting talking about NXT TakeOver, which is good. Like I kind of do with Fanatic Unleashed. Sometimes I stole the idea, well, kind of partially from Rewind Away. That's where I kind of got the inspiration, I guess you could say, to do something like when I look back at a past show or something like that on Unleashed. That was because I remember listening to Rewind Away. It used to be Review Away back in the law days. And I know I always talk about Post Wrestling. Probably, definitely one of my favorite podcasts, if not the most I listen to. So tonight, it is Wednesday, and you know what that means. AEW Dynamite. I'm sure tonight will be a very emotional night. It was announced yesterday that tonight on Dynamite, Mark Briscoe, one half of the Briscoe brothers, will be wrestling in his first match since the tragic passing of his brother Jay last week. He will be facing Jay Lethal. Also tonight would have been Jay Briscoe's 39th birthday. I'm sure they will definitely dedicate the match to him, and kind of reminds me of an episode of WCW Nitro back in 99. I'm not sure exactly how long after the tragedy it was, but Bret Hart and Chris Benoit had a match on Nitro that was dedicated to the memory of Owen Hart as a tribute. And those two, there was no storylines, no angles involved. They just went out there and had a great wrestling match with two great wrestlers. I remember Harley Race being there, and then after the match, they showed some sportsmanship and hugged. And it was all a tribute to Owen Hart, just like tonight. I'm sure the match is going to be a tribute to Jay Briscoe. I'm sure it's definitely not going to be easy for Mark Briscoe tonight. This might be maybe the toughest match of his career, or it might be for him, he might think, going out there to honor the memory of his brother and have a great wrestling match. But like I said, it might be hard for him too. On Monday's episode of Being the Elite, it was dedicated to Jay, of course. The Young Bucks and Brandon Cutler traveling to Dynamite. It was in California, so they only had to drive about 4 hours. And they were talking about, they had the match at Top Flight last Wednesday on Dynamite. They talked about how they didn't know how they could wrestle that match because their minds weren't really focused on it. It was the day after the tragedy. And if you noticed, they did not come out with the AEW Trios Championships. They just completely forgot. Those titles at the time were probably the farthest things from their mind. And they came out with the titles. Can't really blame them. Jay was a good friend of theirs, and like they said on BTE, that the Briscoes are probably the team they probably have faced off against the most in their careers. It's been good to see the pro wrestling community, all the fans, and I'm part of the fans. I'm not in the wrestling media or anything, but also other podcasters who are in the wrestling media, wrestlers, promoters, everybody come together and remember Jay Briscoe. Tonight, Mark Briscoe, Jay Lethal. It's definitely something you want to see. So that's all for this episode of Good Morning Wrestling Fans. Hope everyone has a great day. Like I said earlier, if it's snowing where you are, or if you're here in Michigan like me, be safe and careful out here with the snow. Remember, till next time, keep watching pro wrestling.